Hello, fellow humans and people interested in universal basic income, also known as UBI. In our monthly community event, we have Marcel,
Hello.
and my name is Daniela. Hello. Today's topic is an interesting one because I hear it very often in conversations about technological unemployment, about AI and robotics. And people say, well, we'll just go and move to the countryside and live off the land. We just do what we used to do, what humans always used to do in the past, and grow our own food. We're going to be connected to the earth and the land again, as we used to be when we were all healthier and happier. This is what we're going to do. And I like that idea. I really, really do. This romantic idea of living off the land as a positive does have a lot of appeal, even to myself. So that's why it's really important that today we talk about why this is not an option. First of all, not for most of us, and secondly, it just isn't. There are too many people in cities that don't have that option, and I would like to go through some of those considerations that sometimes are left at the wayside when suggesting comments like that. First of all, though, Marcel, would you like to start talking about this topic before I start going through a list of things?
I think the first thing to point out is that not everybody actually wants to go back to the land and live off the land and farm. I, for one, have no interest in farming for my own food. I enjoy the fact that there's food in the supermarket whenever I want it, and I pop down and I go buy what I want when I need it. I don't have to worry about the seasons, that there are only certain things available at a particular time of year because they get flown in from all over the world. They get grown in greenhouses. They have everything that I want available all the time. The thought of me having to go grow my own food is just not appealing to me. So I'm one of those people that have no interest in going back to the land. Um, so that's the first thing worth pointing out. I think the second thing is that there are so many of us, even if we all wanted to go back to the land, even if that was the option going forward, there isn't the space anymore. People used to talk about the fact that we were going to outgrow the food supply, that food growth was arithmetical. In other words, it's growing at a steady rate, whereas the population was growing exponentially. The rate of increase was increasing all the time, and it wasn't going to take long before we would have too many people and not enough food. Now we've got around that problem of, if we can call it a problem, of too many people and not enough food, because we have the advanced farming techniques, which includes everything from fertilizers to just mechanized farming. That fact that only 4% of people actually are needed at the moment to farm for all the food that we need available at the moment is the reality. Is that the fact that we can produce enough food for the 8 billion people that are on the planet at the moment without all of those 8 billion people needing to farm. And also, more importantly, on a much smaller land area than would be needed for each individual person growing their own food. We've actually managed to concentrate how much food we can grow on the same piece of land. So there is not enough land, if you were to divvy out enough land to everyone to be able to grow their own food, that is suitable for farming, suitable for the kind of agriculture that would be required going forward. So it's not even a feasible solution just from a sheer numbers point of view. The population of the Earth has grown from 1 billion just at the beginning of the 20th century to the 8 billion now. Right? And these numbers that we were worried about the population growing too quickly were raised in the 19th century. So, we're not able to have 8 billion people all farming for their own food because we just don't have the agricultural land to make that happen. So we need to rely on the advanced farming techniques that we have available today to be able to produce the food for everyone. And it's quite sad when you bring this up with some people who think, oh, we'll go back to the land, where they fully acknowledge that this is the case. Right? To be able to go back to the land, we'd have to reduce the population of the earth right, by 90% to get back to the numbers that were around at the time when everybody was farming. Nobody talks about who those 90% are or how that's going to happen, and the tragedy that would be involved with all those people, being removed from society. And when we say removed, it's dying or being killed or something. So it's not, actually even a feasible approach, even for the people that do think that this is a solution going forward. That's, without actually reducing the numbers of people significantly, it's not an option. So those are the key points from my perspective on that topic.
Yes. Let me just throw something out there for the haters of this world. I know you. We've spoken a lot about this topic, so let me just put the hypothesis out there that you're not saying that for our current lifestyle there are too many people, or for the future there are too many people. The number of people is only we can only consider the number of people on the planet right now as too high if every single individual would have to go out and have a plot of land big enough to grow their own food, and that means plants as well as animal material in order to survive. And when I say animal material, yes, I know vegetarian and vegan people out there. I have no problem with that. The problem comes with clothing. So, clothing can be produced from plants, I understand that. However, I prefer wool, so therefore, a sheep, maybe a goat, maybe a good idea, things like that. So, I'm talking about farming in a wider holistic sort of sense. So the number of people on the planet right now, perfectly happy with it. I think we're both perfectly happy with the number. It doesn't matter if the number of people goes up or it goes down. Naturally, there will always be some fluctuation, but if we think of everyone having their own plot of land, then we're going to run into issues. Just clarifying, can you just confirm that this is what you
No,
mean?
exactly. It's not a feasible solution because there are so many of us. If it was ever to become a feasible solution, even the people that vouch for this agree that we'd have to reduce cotton, right, to make your clothing. Right, that's additional land space that would be required that couldn't be allocated to people for growing their food.
Yes, and that is where the whole story becomes interesting. So we briefly talked about how much space we need. And then more practically, um, do you have land that you can go to? A lot of people say, "Oh, we just go and live with my parents. They have land and they can grow their own things." And it's like, well, do they grow their own food at the moment? It's like, no, but they've got land. Sure, okay. So do they have enough land for the whole family or only for themselves? Is one question. And if you don't have land of your own, how are you going to purchase it? Do you want to own it, or are you going to rent it? Where does your money for that come from? It's a practical consideration. If there is mass unemployment because of artificial intelligence, robotics, progress, then how are you going to deal with that? Are you going to buy land? Are you going to buy seeds every year to grow your crops? Do you have the knowledge to do that? I'm trying to set up a little herb garden in the kitchen, which is a lot less ambitious than feeding myself. And guess what? The first few lots have died. I need to learn how to do it. A few months just is not enough. Looking after plants, recognizing when things are going wrong, it's quite hard work. I would not ever underestimate the knowledge farmers have in their niche. Now, I have to point out that my grandparents were farmers. I have a lot of uncles and aunts that specialize in different animals or different grains or vegetables. So I have an insight, secondhand knowledge on some of the aspects of it. For example, as a child, staying with my grandparents at summertime, as children, we were never allowed to watch baby animals being born, for example. It was considered too gruesome for us. Well, that's going to be your job now. If you want to stick your hand, and I mean the whole hand, not the first bit, no, no, your hand up to your shoulder into an animal's vagina to pull out the front legs of a calf, be my guest. I've never done it. I hope I never will because I don't think I'm cut out for it.
And that's the beauty of birth. Never mind the killing of the animal when you want to eat it later.
Yes. Again, as children, we were never allowed to watch the slaughter of an animal because it supposedly is too gruesome, and therefore we were well kept away. Basically, we were locked into the house like in a little zoo, and that was that. Um, Personally, I think it's a very good attitude. I would not want a small child to go through something that involves a lot of blood and poo and urine just for the fun of it. I think it takes a certain kind of maturity to, especially with animals, slightly different with plants, but with animals, the care for an animal is quite hard. If you have children yourself and you're a full time caregiving parent, you know what it's like to look after a child when it is sick. It is very similar if you have animals. And there's no more holidays, there's no more going away. It's every day and it's relentless. So it doesn't matter if it rains or if it's super hot in summertime, you will have to go and look after your fields or your animals and you will be outside. Have you ever thought about that leathery look some people in closer to the equator have when they approach their mature later years in life? That leathery brown look, in your skin, that will be you. Welcome. That's the life of a farmer.
Yeah. Or a dedicated suntanner.
Correct. And yes, there are health benefits that come along with being a lot outside, being very active. So yes, there is some good coming out of it. I'm not suggesting it's a bad lifestyle. And people who want to do it full time, as Marcel alluded to, I'm so glad they exist. I really, really am. But would I want to do it? No, there is too much that I'm not cut out for. Also, there's too much knowledge I don't have, and I've seen some of it. And I always wonder that the people who say, "Oh, we just go and live off the land," most of those people I've come across are people who have never set foot on a farm. They don't know what's involved. They don't know how hard the work and the effort actually is.
They barely worked in an allotment.
Yes,
So I understand people will have their own bit of garden and they grow a few carrots and a few potatoes and various different vegetables, and that's lovely. The people will praise their food and what they've done and what they can grow. If they enjoy that kind of thing and it's their hobby, they can get the rewards from that. But they will also point out the fact that it's not enough to live on
yes,
just because they're growing their own vegetables in their backyard, right? And they're lovely when they are produced and they really enjoy it and they enjoy the food that is produced. They still need to go to the supermarket, right, to get all the other things that they need, to live a normal, healthy lifestyle. So
yes,
it's not a complete solution. Even those people that do manage to grow their own food.
yes. One example is my mother. Her hobby is her garden. The things she does grow, she does not need to buy in the shop. For example, pumpkins. Her land is perfect. Her garden. It's not land as such. It's just a garden around the house, pretty much. But she has pumpkins of about 25 kilos every now and then. So there's a lot of those. And for those things that she grows, she does not need to go shopping. But she doesn't grow everything she needs. She doesn't grow everything she needs to stay healthy. And also, one thing forget is that if there is a good harvest with, let's say, green beans, this year was a green bean year, and I know that because every time I call her, she's eating green beans, and you can tell that, oh, green beans are lovely, beautiful. And then after a couple of weeks, it's like, oh, green beans again. A few more weeks, it's like, oh, green beans. Like, oh, so many green beans, too many green beans. That's what happens as well, and that is including modern refrigeration. But when you grow your own food, chances are you will want to eat it when it's fresh and when it's there, rather than batching everything up immediately. That's not the point of the exercise either. And yes, she needs to go shopping. She has no animals at home, which means she has to purchase all of her meat, fish, cheese, unless you make your own cheese. There's no cheese here either, and things like that. And then you need to either trade with somebody who's willing to exchange their goods for your goods, or you still need to have money. And on the topic of money, how do you feel about electricity? How do you feel about TV, your washing machine, the dishwasher, the microwave? Like,
Flushable toilet.
sorry?
The flushable toilet.
Flushable toilet is one of my favorites, to be honest. A hot shower in the morning, lovely. And for that, you need electricity. And for electricity, you either have your own generator and then you need fuel for the generator, or you buy it. And again,
Solar.
you can go for solar, in which case you have to buy the solar panels upfront initially as an investment. Of course, you can buy an allotment or a farm or something that has it already installed, or you're lucky to inherit something that is fully set up, but otherwise, there still needs to be money from somewhere. And if everyone is farming and living off the land, where do you get your money from? I honestly, um, I honestly can't think of a way other than local communities coming up with their own local currencies as a means of exchange rather than a store value. That has successfully happened in a few areas around the globe. Personally, I'm very much in favor. But this, again, quite often is a local type of currency. So Sardex is one example that was in the papers about 20 years ago now. There's one example, a local one in Austria I've come across. There was one in Germany after the Second World War, after everything was gone. And people still needed to trade and exchange, so they came across or they came up with a currency for local means, so you can exchange, from the butcher to the small dairy to whatever you have to offer.
But that comes back to the original problem, right? Everyone's farming, right? Who's producing the other stuff that you're going to pay for? So when there's a
Automation.
short, no, but that's the thing, right? This is the answer to getting away from AI, is that everyone goes back to farming, so they don't have to have a job, right? So because they're growing their own food, they don't need money because they. But the reality is they do still need money, and where they're going to get that money from, right? Are they going to be producing surplus farm products that they can, you say, go to market and sell their excess wares to who? To everybody else that's also farming, right? Or are we going to have specialists again? People doing specific tasks that others that don't do, and it's that ludicrous aspect of it. Just goes back to where we are today, right? We don't have everyone farming because we don't need everyone to farm, because we only need 4% of people to farm. Everyone else has gone to the city, right, to earn money doing jobs, initially doing factory jobs, but doing jobs. And that's where we are today, because we don't need that many people farming. There's not going to be that many people creating a surplus, right? They can sell at market, right? And the reality is, at the moment, we don't need those people, right? Because of automation. All those jobs they went to the city for, all those factory jobs, have been automated. And even all the factory jobs that people lost because the machines started taking over the factories, and all the office jobs that turned up, those have been automated. And that's where the AI aspect comes into it. All the jobs that people went to when their previous jobs, initially farming, then factory, right, and now the office jobs as well, is where do they go now? What is the next thing? And the next thing doesn't exist, because AI will learn it quicker than you can. There will be a bot that will be doing it, and it will learn it quicker than you can
Yes.
if it hasn't learned it already. And that's the real situation. And you can't go back to where we were before, because that time is gone.
And even if people think, oh yes, but I'm an exception, I still can go farming. Turns out farming has been automated as well. There are collars which you may have seen in city situations. You may have seen them on dogs, like small collars, so you don't have to put up a fence. There is a digital fence that you no longer see, and the collar gives the dog a little bit of a shock to give a little warning not to go further. And the closer the dog gets to the road, the more of a shock it gets in order to encourage it to go back to safety towards the house. That exists for cows, it exists for goats and sheep as well. So you no longer need people to put fences up. You no longer need people to come and drive the cattle back to the farm for feeding and milking. You just give them a signal on the little collar. They've been trained that this signal means come back home, there will be food. So all of that.
But that's the whole point. This is why we only need, I mean, I think 4% is an overestimate anyway. But that's why we only need 4% of people doing the farming, because so much of farming has been automated. So much of it has been mechanized. And even then, it's not stopped. It didn't stop being mechanized back in the 19th century, right? It has continued. The technology available to farmers today, as you rightly point out, is all computerized and automated. You know, farmers need less and less, help from people, less and less, manual labor, because it all gets automated.
Yes.
That's the beauty of it. That's why we don't need farmers. That's why we don't need people, doing backbreaking work, digging holes to put seeds in the ground, which is always the picture you have of these people when they go back and things. It's just crazy. That's not how it would be, even if people did go back to farming.
The, just let me throw something out there again. So what Marcel described with pulling out a single carrot, taking a small step forward, and another single carrot, it does exist in the case of my mother and people like her for whom gardening is a hobby and they enjoy the gardening as one part and they enjoy using what they grow and eating what they grow. And trust me, it is so nice and so good to taste something fresh from the garden, just rinsed off with water, and just then and there. It's just the best food you can imagine. It is hard work. She also is using it as her exercise regime, so she is fit as a fiddle, and it is in part down to carrying heavy soil or the dung in autumn and springtime, digging a lot, turning the earth over, and doing all of that work. It's part of her fitness regime. That is how she spends her retirement years, and I love it. But it's not enough to live off. The automated versions, those are big, massive tractors that do multiple rows at the same time and they just drive through. They may not drive at 100 miles an hour, but they drive as fast as you can walk and they just pull out not one carrot at a time, they pull out tens and dozens of carrots at a time continuously every minute. So there's no stopping until the whole field is done, and the whole field will be done in a few hours by one person. Sometimes there are two machines you need, then you need two people. And as we know from Tesla and Waymo and all of the other self directing cars, that can be automated, especially on the largest scale farms in the US. You can automate the pretty much straight rows that the machine needs to go along. So you need no people other than somebody to program the machine.
And that only needs to be done once.
Yes. And then you push the button and off it goes and does its thing.
Yeah.
Um, and that's that. So if you think, yeah, but you still need people to know whether the plants are growing well or not. Turns out drones are a really big help in that respect. You send the drone out to the field rather than going yourself. You have imaging, mapping with AI that's been used successfully in medicine for a long time. You use the same technology on plants and what they look like. Problem solved. Rather than 100 people on a farm, you need a few of them, and the rest will be done by AI, by drones. machinery, whatever you want.
And
It,
the robot weeders and
yes,
robot everything. Every single stage has been automated with a robot.
yes. Now I'd like to do a little tangent here because I think it's important as well. And again, it's one for the haters out there. Not that I think I can bring them round, but just to mention it. Anyone thinking that progress equals a negative for humanity, I just want to say that the number of pesticides has gone down with progress and technology. You don't need that many pesticides anymore because there are robots that are being trained to recognize which pest is growing on a plant, which insect needs to be eradicated. They then go and collect the natural antidote. So, in some cases, certain types of spiders would be eating certain types of pests. They get the right spider, off you go. Things like that. There's a lot of research being done on it to help reduce the pesticide use on foodstuffs. So if you're curious and you can't sleep one day, have a look. It's really interesting research, and I would highly recommend it.
I think the key thing there as well is the whole organic farming aspect, where they have reduced the use of pesticides, because you wouldn't be able to use them if it was still to remain organic. But the cost of organic farming and organic produce is not that much greater than the cheapest, machined, pesticide-used farming products that do come out. So the whole fact that things have been automated, right, has allowed for the reduction in pesticides as well to bring ultimately the cost of organic products down, so that they are within range of the cheapest products that you can buy.
Yes. And I'm quite happy to take anyone who is interested and show you around those places that I've been mentioning, the smaller ones, European based, and show you what's happening here. But there's a lot of good technology, a lot of good progress that, for me at least, are great and fantastic. I love my vegetables, as anyone can attest to. I also like meat, but it's the vegetables that I'm really after, and I do prefer organic as much as I possibly can. So I think progress in that direction is always a good thing. That brings me back again. If you think you can compete with a supermarket that is hooked into farms and producers, no matter how small, because they're automated, they can produce at a good price, and they know what they're doing, and they have been doing it for decades, and you really think that you growing your own vegetables and produce will be equally as good and equally as um, cheap. Let's use the word cheap, not the best word for this scenario, but as cheap as what you can buy in a shop. You still think this is possible, because I would like to see your thought pattern, how you're going to make it happen, because that would be really interesting to see and see evidence of as well. Personally, I have no land. I would have to buy it. I don't have any energy generation equipment, so I would have to buy that as well. I don't have enough knowledge. I know I don't have enough knowledge. I don't have any seedlings. I don't have any animals to start with. So, in order to
Farming tools.
farming tools, let alone those, yes. So, for me to even think about living off the land would be crazy. So that's why I don't do it. I don't enjoy it. I don't do it. What I do enjoy is trying to have those conversations with people and how they imagine the future. Personally, I imagine it a lot more automated, a lot more progress, a lot more technology, and that will result in better quality food for a lot more people, for the appropriate amount of food in the world for the right number of people. What gets to me is seeing a lot of food being wasted and thrown away, while on the other hand, a lot of people are going hungry in the world. I would like to see that problem solved, and it's possible.
That's a socio-economic problem. There is enough food in the world for everyone, even the 8 and a bit billion people that we have on the planet today. There's enough food for that. In fact, there's more than enough food. As you say, some gets thrown away. It's the allocation and distribution thereof right, that relies on a market-based system where people have to work at something, a job or doing something to earn money so they can go to the market or supermarket, but a market to buy food. And without money, they can't buy food. And therefore, the food that has been produced that isn't sold because somebody couldn't afford it, right, gets thrown away. And it's the distribution of the food and allocation of the food to make sure that everybody gets, what they need, right? That is needs to change, and that's the socio-economic system that we have at the moment.
Exactly. And that is exactly where I want to get to. What I enjoy is trying to get people to imagine a better world, one where the system is better and fairer. Um, I've just seen some news clip earlier on about Donald Trump changing the White House. Spending millions and millions and millions on something that's completely unnecessary. But at the same time, he's taking money and food away from the poorest of the poor. That needs to be changed. And one way to change that is with a UBI, a universal basic income. No questions asked. Everyone gets it. The money wouldn't go to waste because it would kickstart the economy. People will be able to afford not only the food they need to survive, but also the clothing, the shelter, everything to have a dignified life. And that, in and of itself, will create a positive upward trend in the economy. One recent example is in Ireland, where they have a UBI for artists, to, to call it that, and they spend 72 million on a limited UBI for artists program 2 years ago, and the outcome was a economic return of 80 million. So they got more than a 10% return on investment. So they have decided that as of the beginning of next year, they are going to roll it out for artists in general. So there are some criteria on how you can prove you're an artist in order to be eligible, but it is there. They have proven that it's working, and now they're going full time with it, at least for artists. I know it's limited in scope. I do believe that once this project or this UBI set up, because it's no longer a pilot at this point, it's there now. It's a real thing for artists in Ireland. Once this is rolled out, a few years down the line, when you will see the even greater positive returns, then it will, I believe, it will be expanded to more professions.
I'd like to just point out that it's not a UBI; it's conditional basic income. There's certain conditions that need to be met before somebody can get this income, and as you said, they have to prove that they're artists. And that administration of receiving the proofs and finding out who adds costs to the system. And one of the big benefits of a UBI is that it's unconditional, and therefore the costs of monitoring who gets it and who doesn't get removed as well. So the fact that it's generating a positive return on investment includes the fact that it has additional costs that a UBI wouldn't. And this is for people that are artists, right? These are people that don't contribute to the economy per se. They contribute in other ways in creating beautiful artworks and things like that. But the money that they get, right, goes back into the economy and generates income. So the products that they're producing are not what's necessarily generating the income. It's the fact that they have money that they can then use for other things. And even if it's just buying materials and feeding it back into the system. You're trying to correct me, I think.
Yeah, no, not correct you. I'm trying. I'm thinking about it slightly differently. So yes, there are conditions in terms of you need to prove you're an artist, and I only looked at it briefly. So, for example, either you have a certain number of reviews or a certain number of sales. There are a few conditions to be able to sign up. So that's correct. Thank you for pointing that out. Where the point that I think about slightly differently is that I do believe artists are producing something. It may
I
be a,
agree.
it may be a song, it may be a picture, it may be a story. Um, for me, architects are artists as well in many ways. It's just a
I
more
agree.
visible way of being an artist. and that product or service is then being sold to other people. So, in my opinion, and everyone can have a different opinion, that there is a product or service that changes hands. So, in my worldview, they do contribute.
I'm not saying they don't contribute. What I'm saying is that their artwork is not what's being used to demonstrate a positive return to the economy. It's the fact that they've received money that they can use to buy stuff, right? That then goes back into the economy that generates the positive return, right? It's not the fact that they've sold 80 million euros worth of art, right? And it only costs the Irish government 72 million, to pay them.
Yes, correct.
Is what I'm trying to say, is they are making a contribution through their artwork, sure, but it's not an economic contribution, not totally an economic. Some of them do sell their artwork, and that's part of proving that you're a professional artist, is that you can sell your artwork. But they are contributing to the economy, right? Because they have money that they can then go and spend on everything else. And that is where the positive return comes from. There's money in the economy, right, that is then being used, right, to keep the economy going. And the fact that they contribute by creating art is their choice. And that's the beauty of it. And I think that's the fundamental missing point with how UBI will work, is that even artists receiving a UBI ultimately end up with a positive return on the money that gets sent out to people. So imagine if people that didn't create art, to actually created products and services, right, were working and doing what they wanted to do, and creating quality products and services, right, were given a UBI, right? Imagine then what would happen to the economy, what return you would get then. And I think that's my point, is that you're getting a positive return on investment from artists, right? And it's not the art,
Don't
but it's
make it sound so bad. I think it's beautiful when
I think it's
somebody's an
beautiful as
artist.
well, right? But it's, if we're looking at it purely from an economic positive point of view, positive return of investment, it's not the art that's created.
It depends. I read one study a few years ago about a test in a hospital. So they had two hospitals that are pretty much the same. One of them was rather plain, and in the other one they installed beautiful art as a test if beautiful art makes has an impact on recovery. And
I
yes,
want
it
to make
turned.
it. I want to make it clear, right, that I do think art makes a positive contribution to the world, right? I 100% believe that more people should be artists and authors and anything that's creative. They're just not creating contributing to the economy, right? It's a few successful artists, a few successful authors that do contribute to the economy, and these are the ones that are loudest about not um, making sure that they continue to get their money through their sales. But those are few and far between. That's not where the money, how the economy works, through those few artists that are successful and make the millions and get the big names and things like that. Most of the art that is created, right, doesn't create that return. The authors and the artists I know, right, don't make money from selling their books and their art and their pictures and their paintings and their sculptures and everything else that's created. Most of them have to work at something else to feed themselves. And I think that's key in this experiment, is that you have a
And now imagine, as you said, that that is being rolled out to everyone.
yeah.
That that's the dream, literally. That would be a dream come true if I see it in my lifetime, because it would free everyone up to do whatever they want. And if living off the land is what you want to do, please go for it. The world just does need people like that as well, who go have a dream to make something happen.
Yeah. And most importantly, those artists haven't stopped being artists just because they're receiving a UBI. They're not creating art because that's how they make their money. They're creating art because they love creating art, right? And they continue creating art. And I think when people do what they love, they will dedicate their time and effort and everything because that was their life. That's what how they contribute to the world. That's what they enjoy doing,
Yes.
and people will continue to do that. It's the people that have the jobs they don't like, right, that will quit. Hopefully, but
Yes.
if you love your job, you're not going to quit.
Yeah, I completely agree.
You may quit and go start your own business doing that, but you're not going to stop doing what you're doing if you love it.
Yes. Now, that was it for me today.
Yeah, I think it's a good positive note to end.
Think about it. Talk about it if you like. Talk with your friends and family about it, your co-workers. What would you do if you received a UBI? And when I say a UBI, something that really covers all of your costs of living. Maybe without the super yacht that Bezos has, but a normal standard life. If you had enough money coming in every month to cover your basic needs, what would you do? Would you stay in your job? Would you start your own company? Would you start studying again? Would you have another child with your partner? Yes or no? Things like that. Would you go and live off the land?
That's what I was thinking.
If,
Because and I think that's the key question as well, is that if you think going back to living off the land is the right answer, is the solution, then let us know as well,
yes,
right? If you
please.
think everybody should be doing that, if you think that is the answer to the automation of all jobs in AI, and you disagree with what we've just said about whether it's a viable solution, please also get in touch and let us know.
Yes, you're always welcome to join here. We love company. We love different ideas, especially because some of those ideas that mankind, not only us two, but the mankind will need is the how do we get there? And we have alluded to it last time round, or 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago. We will go over the topic again in terms of how to pay for it and how to make it happen more specifically, given that there is resistance to UBI in the world and it needs to be broken down. So let us know what you think about the idea of living off the land with or without a UBI, and what would you do if you had a UBI. See you next time round on the first Tuesday of December, 4 p.m. UTC. The clocks have changed now, so from now on it will be another 6 months of staying stable in terms of time zone. So see you then. Bye bye.
Bye.